Our stories, our freedom, Black voices, transforming shame and stigma. 3 men who have lived through the early days of the HIV epidemic share their stories of redemption, survival, and hope. As Black Brothers Esteem and the San Francisco AIDS Foundation celebrates San Francisco Pride 2015. The process of writing and performing has been very healing for these men, said Sean Dimmons, Black Brothers Esteem Community Engagement and Mobilization Manager. It has been inspiring to witness their transformation as they reflect on their own life experiences. William Dean, Raphael Rogers, and Stanley Allison work with performing artist Anthony Julius Williams, artistic director of the Iruke Project, during a 6-week workshop. The project uses personal storytelling as a way to explore factors contributing to disparities in health and wellness, such as shame, stigma, isolation, internalized homophobia, racism, and transphobia. African American men and men who have sex with men are disproportionately affected by HIV. Black men who have sex with men make up 12% of the San Francisco HIV positive population, while African Americans are only 6% of the population. Black Brothers Esteem is a program of the San Francisco AIDS Foundation focused on supporting African American gay, bisexual, and same-gender loving men living in the Tenderloin Polk Gulch and the 6th Street corridor neighborhoods of San Francisco. William Dean, Raphael Rogers, Stanley Allison. Our stories, our freedom, Black voices, transforming shame and stigma. William Dean marks the 25th anniversary of his HIV diagnosis by acknowledging the gifts left behind by his now deceased friends who have enabled him to survive.
As my friends and I snapped and gyrated to Sylvester's Can't Stop Dancing on the tallest hill in the city, Twin Peaks, his music bled right on down to the Saturday Castro Streetwalkers, while our weed smoke, mixed with the city by the bay fog, created a summer night mist thick as pea soup. Intoxicated by my happiness, I was in sync with the Do You Wanna Funk With Me Divas vibe. We were in full swing because we had broken free from our former city of a witch hunt. Lady Alberta, Albert, Joy, Gardner, Hannah, David, Raisin, Lester, Madame Dewberry, Alexander, and me, Mahalia, made up our band of gypsies who laid claim to our new home this night. My dreams no longer deferred, my burden with shame and stigma no longer embattled, my life as a beautiful Black gay man no longer denied. It was the ideal setting for our reunion to chant our pledge, "You are my friend." Gardner, our ancient elder, Harriet Tubman, claimed his blessing that cut through the thickness of the night for the whole city to open its arms. I was the last one to arrive to this city after a 10-month stop in Vegas, where I scandalized my name so much so that that part of my story stays there. I was now interested in creating a new journey with these lovable 5. David, our mammy-like sweetness, was the nurse who swore he was no Nurse Ratched. Albert, the Wikipedia for us, found his place at the main library desk. Lester was the drama queen, the Vietnam vet, and Paul Winfield look-alike. Alexander was the Schomburg socialite who put on bourgeois airs 24/7. And I possessed the Gene Brody standard towards my students, being only as strong as a rock. On this night, I felt a charged battery, a high voltage carrying enough power to make me shine in a larger community touched by gentleness, tenderness, and sensitivity, where I would not receive a badge of shame like I had in New Jersey. So one by one, like thieves, we stole away from the chokehold that panicked every black man to gaps. I can't breathe. Our holding hands as energy circulated from one to another brought forth an outpouring of wellness and love. Feeling good about loving ourselves and each other was enough. That revolutionary moment took hold of us. We traded fear for fearlessness and no longer looked outside myself, of them, or for someone to make me safe. Little did I know or could imagine that in 1985, I was standing on shaky ground with no warning of alarm. This night masked an omen of how an unknown outlaw would attack, robbing me of my hopes and dreams, shaking my core to unrecognizable and seemingly unfixable proportions. This catastrophe would assume its scourge after my promiscuous behavior, career advancements, spiritual and intellectual growth, and traveling. A 6-year safety net, so I thought, would have holes in it for deadly invaders to enter. There would be nowhere to escape and nowhere to hide. 1991 was fast in coming. Not mindful of either time or storm warnings, the rains came. Oh my, didn't it rain? Some moaning, some groaning, some praying was my refrain throughout that year. Albert and Gardner took on scary images at the same time. When I finally got them to see a doctor, Gardner's HIV diagnosis resulted. Albert's followed. This news was like all the wind was sucked out of me, making me unable to speak, to think, or do anything. There was a whole lot of waiting for we know not what. In truth, we knew what it was. It was the weight of death, like a heavy brick lying on our chests, while infected and dead celebrity images flooded TV screens. Rock Hudson had died of AIDS shortly after my West Coast arrival. Our archivist, Sylvester, died. Then Magic Johnson announced his HIV status. Seemingly, the burden of this disease weighed heavier on black gay men. The voices of Marlon Riggs, Essex Hemphill, and Joseph Beam spoke to the racism, homophobia, and myths about black men. I wanted to embrace these mighty voices that were calling to arms all black gay men to stand in their truth without shame, not to be shaken by outside forces. From TV screens to the streets, shocking images appeared before me. At first, white men in public wore the signs: emaciation, purple lesions, sunken faces, swollen necks, bloated bellies, and the ambling around with canes. Oh my God, did you see his face? Nudging one another when approaching someone in passing. This kind of reaction was teetering painfully on the line of taboo and hushed words. But then it was Gardner who displayed an authentic truth to defy this stigma when he began to show these signs. His face was deathly pale, and the lines of it were hard line-drawn wires. With his living came each stage of his illness. he remained the fearless leader I knew and loved. Albert, on the other hand, was quiet, isolated, barricading himself in his house as if to protect from an enemy that had already attacked. Wanting to do something to make his and Gardner's pain go away was like listening to a time bomb ticking closer and closer to its explosion, with a desperation to figure out how to disconnect its wires. Another blow struck when I received my HIV diagnosis. It was like a hot wind blowing around my head, swirling dark thoughts like ink spilled in water. I ended up on a bar stool, drowning this demon in my body with vodka, but being choked by my thoughts and feelings of shame. My thoughts branded me a member of the Untouchables. All I could imagine was a quick and frightful spiraling downward. This boogeyman was set to terrorize me. Dealing with my infection and trying to comfort Gardner and Albert's pain, I felt like I embodied a double whammy. This double-edged sword had me confined to a sinking boat with the hole unable to seal. Based on what they were dealing with, I knew it would be my turn to recognize those signs on me that I clearly saw in them. Not having the balls that Gardner had, defeatism took hold. He knew how to flaunt his stuff, no matter what kind. I was holding on to guilt and shame because I was a whore too, who had the poison, never to be touched again, cast away with the rest of the pariahs. Regardless of Gardner's and Essex's voices in my head dispelling those negative notions, my voice was louder and more convincing, saying the fault lies with you, William. This was my just desserts. Continuing to cope, the deaths followed one after the other. It was like a rapid fire burning, purifying nothing. Lying next to Gardner in his bedroom, he whispered to me to take charge of his will. More importantly, finding a way to take charge of my life, influenced by his lessons, was my task. After several weeks, Albert was gone too. No more comfort and joy. Plagued by my losses, I asked, how was I to hold my own without frequent interruptions of I don't give a damn? Anger unvented becomes pain unspoken, becomes rage released, becomes violence. Brother to brother haunted me. Erratic thoughts and actions, defeated attitude and esteem, and physical pains became my substance. Why wasn't I getting sick as fast as my friends had? Why did I keep thinking that it was just a matter of time before the bell tolled for me? And why was I opening my arms to harm's seductive offerings? Why couldn't I shake off the notion that that was happening to me was what was punishment? Without any time to get answers, another phone call rang, a cry for support. Rushing to David's house across the bridge, I got him to the hospital where he remained. Eventually, he was diagnosed with AIDS. Juggling daily hospital visits and maintenance of my work schedule turned into getting his affairs in order and realizing I needed help. Not with laying David to rest, but with figuring out what to do with my shattered self. The love of my life, teaching, was suffering. I was in jeopardy by an unacceptable change. I could not cope, so I needed to signal for a rescue. Finding my way back to a recognizable place, colored with laughter, seemed impossible because I was in a deep funk. Nothing ever goes away until it teaches us what we need to know, would serve as my blade to cut away the heaviness of my heart. By 2001, desperation took hold of me, like a boa constrictor choking its prey. With a desperate attempt to participate in therapy sessions, I intended to rid this demon that manifested itself from the virus to an invisible darkness. The once-a-week sessions were like taking hold of a lifeline that was too slippery to hold tightly. Sporadic irritability, isolation, and inattention inhabited my space. My depression was like, I'm drowning constantly, like the life is slowly fading from my body, but as soon as I come up for air, I get pulled right back under before I ever catch my breath. Living a life where I can see the air but never have it is punishing. And while I'm trying to save myself from this pain, Lester contracted 2 bouts of pneumonia in a peculiar sequence that revealed his AIDS. And lo and behold, Alexander received a prostate cancer diagnosis. He was the only one of us who was HIV negative. While they were lying in hospital beds, I felt like I was down for the count as well. A driving force compelled my removing the phone from my bedroom, putting a TV in there, keeping the blinds drawn and door closed. That room became my cave, surrounded by darkness and dismay. As I was going through the motions to battle with my demons, Lester and Alexander's physical circumstances heightened, causing that nagging question, why wasn't I having physical challenges like they were? It was like I wanted to wish myself sicker, but I could not have that wish granted. My preoccupation with self-pity was at an all-time high when I found another therapist who was willing to help me that lasted 18 months. Retired from teaching, and with my therapist's guidance, progress began surfacing. Before, there was no music, leaving me with sounds of silence. And that silence had a deafening sound that was judging me, and people were observing me with judgment. So I needed this music to start again. And when it did, I regained a purpose I knew before my HIV mess, my friends' deaths, and my retirement. Sadly, Lester's life came to an end after he went into a coma. I was by his side when those plugs were pulled, followed by faint gaps of breaths, while I held his warm hand until I detected its coolness. With Lester gone, continuing to save myself was critical. The current sessions were like a toolkit from which I could retrieve a suitable device to control my gloom. Fortunately, it was my journal writing serving as a shovel to dig up patterns of thoughts and behavior connected to that invisible darkness. Found a light. However, Alexander was set back with a diagnosis of third-stage cancer of the sinus. Deciding on his dying place, he and his partner relocated to Palm Springs. After 2 months, Alexander passed, leaving me as the last one left, and having had the longest friendship with him was defining. We are not defined by our things. It's not the clothes we wear, the cars we drive, the art we acquire, or it's not where we live, but how we live that defines us. It's our choices we make and the chances we take that are remembered long after we're gone. Coming out of the dark shadow of HIV and ridding me from that sunken dejection represents a fulfilling pride. Choosing not to hold on to pain and shame was a liberating force because I had others to help me learn this lesson. Representing those who had a profound impact on me, I stand here today in celebration of my life and those who went before me. I would be remiss not to express my thankfulness because feeling gratitude and not expressing it is like wrapping a present and not giving it. Celebrating 25 years HIV positive, living 67 years with a future, and owning my truth to be me are gifts I have to share.
Our stories, our freedom, Black voices, transforming shame and stigma.